Today's topic, what I wish they'd taught us about love. And this is the process of dispelling the myths and learning what might we be doing instead of these kind of outdated, not all that useful myths that we may have learned about love. Let's get into it. Today, we'll explore the biggest myths I felt were imported to me through the culture at large, the realities that I wish I knew. While my language today will primarily focus on committed partnership with a single person, that's just for convenience, because these lessons I think you'll find also apply to friendship. They apply to other kind of non-traditional relationships that you might think of, because love is this mysterious and wonderful thing, and yet we're also learning more and more about it as our understanding of the human body and brain and culture grow. So the more we know, the more it will impact all of our relationships. Okay, let's dispel 3 myths about love. What's the first myth? Myth number 1 is that we think courting is ever done. We think you can be done with courting. This is myth number 1. Okay, so if you've ever courted someone, did anyone ever engage in some courting behavior? Right? Maybe you have a partner now, maybe way back when. And one of the cool things, or did you ever have a crush on someone? Ooh, it's nice to have a crush. So one of the things about the courting phase is that we're on our best behavior. Right? We're on our best behavior. I'm courting you this morning. I spiffed up a little bit. I got my new stole for Valentine's Day, and I actually found out there was a spot on this shirt that I didn't know existed. So I even have a little vest on to cover. Last minute, I found it out like 2 minutes before the sermon started. So I spiffed up, and if you've had a crush on someone and you land a date with them, you're gonna do your best. Right? There are occasionally, I think, in the world, some people who they go on dates and like, well, this is me. Yeah, probably better get used to it. But I don't know that they get many second dates. I mean, it's kind of radical honesty. It's a cool idea, but I'm not sure that they're the ones out there who are getting called back and texted back for that second date. We spruce ourselves in order to court, and we're on our best behavior. What else are we supposed to say about this? Oh yeah. So then the challenge is the myth that maybe it comes from culture a little bit, or maybe it's just kind of like how our minds work. My meditation teacher was talking to me about this today, that we have a tendency to attenuate. Humans our brains and bodies like to get good at things and then try to make them as easy as possible, as low effort as possible. And the good news is when the courting phase finishes, right? You all probably know this, about 6 months to 2 years in, Mother Nature turns off all the crush drugs that she put in your brain. She turns off that tap, and then you actually have to work for the relationship. And so we tend, instead of being on our best behavior, we think, oh, we updated our Facebook status from it's complicated to in a relationship, and now it's official for all to see. And sometimes we stop being on our best behavior. Have you ever seen this happen? Did your, not you, of course, but did your cousin do this? Yeah. Well, there's really good news, is that can signify that we've actually become comfortable, right? Because there's a certain degree of being on your best behavior that they've never seen you in your PJs or like with your makeup off or something like that. And so it's like, I can let the real me show up. The good news is that we've gotten comfortable. The bad news is that this can also make us lazy. Bad news is this can also make us lazy. What do they call this? They call it taking your partner for granted. And it's super easy to do. It's actually, this is one of the things I want us to know. And that the kind of the neuroscience is just getting us up to date, that our human mind is always trying to make tasks easier and easier. But what that can mean is that instead of being in a living, dynamic relationship, wow, I'm showing up, like we are when we have a crush on someone, we can get into these kind of doldrums and it's like, okay, well, you're here again. I mean, thanks for not leaving, I guess. What's on the agenda? Who's going to do the yard work? Who's going to do the dishes? And if we knew that courting is never over, we could save ourselves from a lot of the distress that happens in our intimacy, but also in our friendships. We want to get to that point where we're totally comfortable being authentic, and yet we don't get complacent. We don't start taking the gift of their presence in our lives for granted. All right, what's the answer to this, Rev Fajun? Okay, what does he say? He says, our partner has seen us by this time sick or not dressed up for date night, but as a real human being, and they still love us. Surprise, surprise. Like, how is that even possible? Or our best friend, they still hang out with us. It would be easy to think that this means we don't have to try so hard anymore. Okay, my meditation teacher also, I guess I'm borrowing a lot from another person today. How convenient for me. He does this play on words. He says, if you think you have a relationship, that's a ship that won't sail. We've taken this thing and we've nounified something that is a verb. I don't know if nounifying is a legal thing I can say. I wish Allison was here to tell me. But we've nounified something that is a verb. He says, if you've got a problem in your relationship, put that thing in a package, mail it to me, and I'll fix it for you. But that's an old Zen joke because you can't. It's not a relationship. It is relating. It's relating. It's a verb, not a thing. And we have to think of it as you don't ever get your relationship right. We can only relate well moment to moment. What else do these notes say here? It's not something that you have, it's something that you do. We don't have problems in our relationship, we have problems in our relating. Okay, this was really proven to me when I first learned about this thing called the Gottman Ratio. If you hang out with me for long enough, you're going to hear me talk about the Gottman Ratio. Look them up. We don't have time to talk about it, but John Gottman, this psychologist, Gottman Institute, follow them on Instagram. They found out, like through extensive research, that it takes about 5 positive, enjoyable, comfortable, loving interactions to counteract every 1 closed, critical, uncomfortable, negative interactions and have a relationship thrive. It takes a 5-to-1 ratio. So I learned about this. I learned about this from a different yoga mentor, and it blew my mind. And I said, okay, I never know when I'm going to have an off day and maybe do 3 of those negatives. So I better start loading it with positives, right? This was his suggestion. And so I came home from this yoga retreat and I'm like, babe, I made you some tea. Do you want to go for a walk? It's almost sunset. And I just like any random 5 minutes I had, I was like, what? I better put something in the bank here just in case. And all of a sudden, our relationship was okay, but it started to get really, really sweet. And what I realized was I had started to do what we do when we're courting someone. When we know we have to work for their affection, when we know that, like, we have to let them know how important they are to us, we behave in a different way than we sometimes do when we're under the sway of this cultural myth or our mind's tendency to attenuate. Now, just in case you think Reverend Fajun is like, so, you have to work, you can't get lazy. No, we don't use that kind of language around here. We don't should and lazy at each other. No, but the idea is, like, if you're dating, if you've got a crush on someone, they don't go like, do you want to bring them some flowers? And like, I guess I'll go to work and bring them some flowers, but it'll make them smile. I mean, okay, no, you want, like, oh, I picked you out this great restaurant. You're looking for a movie. And okay, here's a secret in case you didn't learn this before. If you're back in the dating pool, if the date is going to a movie, look for the movie you think they would like, not the one that you would like. It's simple stuff, but it pays off big, big dividends. Okay, so this is the myth that the courting is ever through. Okay, so the method, this comes from yet another of my meditation teachers. If you want a slogan for this, you can boil it all down to try to be more of a giver than a taker. Try to be more of a giver than a taker. And do remember, the giving itself is a gift, right? When you are falling in love with someone, and I know some of you, maybe you're not so open to this idea of falling in love with someone again. A few of us, we get jaded at times, and I think that's okay. That's important. But I know you probably have a dog or a kitty that you like. So you know what I'm talking about. When you give them a treat and they do that helicopter tail thing that folks do, it makes you happy, right? So I'm not saying be a giver more than a taker because altruism is fundamentally more moralistically virtuous. No, be a giver more than a taker because it's going to make both of you happier, and it avoids the trap of objectification, that this person is now an object who can meet my needs, that this relationship is a static thing that can now meet my needs. If we think of what can I bring to this situation, how can I light up this person's life, already you've fixed like 99% of the relationship problems that are out there, and they're going to be much more likely to want to do the same right back to you. Myth 1, we think that courting is ever over. Oh, I'm comfortable now, I can attenuate. No need to try anymore. We've built a relationship and let's set sail. Canceled. Myth number 2, we think that attraction is enough. Somebody said this one earlier, and we also heard about Cupid, right? Who, we think, oh yeah, Cupid's going to strike you, and then happily ever after, you fall in love, and then you just never stand back up. You've just fallen, and you can't get back up in love. So we think that attraction is enough. Attraction is Mother Nature's way of creating more diversity. This diversity and this attraction, we're trying to make something new. Unfortunately, the freebie chemicals, and really they say it's like the brain scans look like a person who's addicted to cocaine. It's really weird when they do an fMRI on you. The person who's like in love looks like someone who's on drugs. It's really quite a trip. But after about a year in there, the free drugs wear off. And now you have to figure out, what are we actually doing here? What are we actually doing here? It becomes a type of work, but we don't mean work in some Calvinist, tyranny of nose to the grindstone. It's your relationship, get back to work. We mean work like work is love made visible. Okay, so it's out with Calvin, in with Khalil Gibran. Work is love made visible. Attraction is not enough. So Mother Nature turns off that tap after a little while. The big news that we need to know, though, is that attraction, here's one of the recent findings that we need to help dispel this myth. Attraction, being smitten with someone, is almost always a sign, some theorists say, that they either have the reciprocal to your weird attachment style, or they're like subtly replaying your family of origin drama that never got worked out. I'll recommend you. I really love the work of Harville and Helen Hendricks. They present it more like in a case study format, but there are some more kind of data-driven research models that support this. But another great book is Your Brain on Love, and it's just a modern, easy book on attachment styles. And what we find is that people who have an avoidant attachment style, like myself, we like to go in our room, we like to read some books, be left alone. We tend to hook up with people who have an anxious attachment style, who love to be together and read a book together and maybe make some food together. And why are you going to your room? In an old classic, another one is Daniel Goleman's Emotional Intelligence. I was reviewing a while ago for a class I was teaching. And back then, we didn't know quite as much about attachment theory as we do now, but they talked about fusers and isolators, and how we'll notice this tendency in relationships. Why do the fusers and the isolators always end up married? And then they're so bummed because they're like, oh, he should just give me some attention. And he says, she should just lay off me every once in a while and leave me alone. And I use gendered terms because they often fall into that, but that's not a strict rule. So attract, and what's weird, you go into this relationship and you go like, oh, this one's great. She's nothing like my mom and she's nothing like my ex-girlfriend. And when the drugs turn off, you realize she's exactly like your mom and exactly like your ex-girlfriend, because how the unconscious works is it picks the ones that feel like home. So I heard a relationship coach teach a class. I really disagreed at first when I heard this, but she said, oh yeah, if somebody's a 10 for you, oh wow, they're really the best thing ever, you should definitely avoid them. I said, that's no fair. But her argument was that strong feeling is likely that they are signaling, and you can't see it consciously, it's in that unconscious, but something about them, you're like, something feels so familiar. Have we met before? I feel like I've always known you. It means they feel just like dad. And you should know it's not an impossible situation, but you should know that that's what's going on behind the scenes in a lot of these cases. So attraction is not enough. In fact, sometimes attraction is not the good news that we really thought it would be, right? Wouldn't it be cool if it turned out that like the people who, had the best match on the dating app or whatever were always the ones that had a sustainable relationship? It doesn't seem to turn out that way. So what do we need to know instead? Thing we need to know is that when you get into those patterns that a lot of partnerships do, the isolator is frustrated by the fuser and the fuser is frustrated by the isolator. We can often heal these challenges through what they call earned secure attachment. Now, some of you, I'm not even preaching to the choir, because good news, some research shows like at least half the population has secure attachment, right? They felt by their parents of upbringing. They don't have the same kind of wounds, but some of us, we learn to heal ourselves through making a wall. In Your Brain on Love, they call those islands. Some of us are islands, and they call the other ones waves. And they do that through merging with the other waves. And in that book, he says, you want to become an anchor. You want to become an anchor. This is called earned secure attachment. Okay, to boil it down really fast, because we're running out of time here, but they say the good news is you usually are attracted to a partner who does the opposite to us. And if we just learned a little bit of their skill, not only would it make them a lot happier, but that's our best direction of growth. So me, if I get distressed in a relationship, I want to run away and hide. And I've done that all my life. If I've gotten any growth out of it, I've already gotten as much as I'm going to get. My learning curve is to actually open through my discomfort and make more connection. Communicate more instead of, oh, let's take some space. My thing is to go like, let's reduce the space and talk nice about it and maybe hug afterward. Oh, it gives me the heebie-jeebies. But anybody who knows me would know that I would be a much cooler person if I did a little more of that and a little less of what I always do. My partner, perhaps, the book says, I can't talk about her while she's not here. I better not on Valentine's Day Eve, but I bet she tends to like, to come together. And they say the direction of growth is through the self-regulation. So, if you're more of a fuser, if you learn to self-regulate, not only would your partner be like, oh, thank God, but you would be growing into your missing link. So bad news is attraction is not enough. Good news is our partners who we choose, and this does not apply to abusive situations, by the way, this is like moderately healthy relationships, but our friends as well. When they're most frustrating to us, they are likely showing us the very thing we need to grow to our next level of fullness. Whoa. Okay, last one, here we go. The last myth is that we think there is a right way to do it. We think there's a right way to do a relationship. You've heard this culturally. I mean, the worst ones are marriage is between one so-and-so and another. I'm not even going to say it here because I don't want to platform it. There's a right way and a wrong way. No, expletive deleted, but no. I'll just say no. And as I'm talking about this view of like in that last one, like transformative, integrative relationship. Your partner will grow you, and wow. Well, guess what? Your relationship doesn't have to be transformative if you don't want it to be. It could be comfortable. You'll still need some of these tools. You need the Gottman ratio to make your relationship comfortable, but you don't have to it doesn't have to be a vehicle for your growth. It could just be, it could be the best thing ever. But you know what? It also doesn't have to be comfortable. It could be a vehicle. You can do it however you want. Ooh, I'm getting all fired up like a real life preacher. Because this is our first Unitarian Universalist principle, the inherent worth and dignity of every person. That your unique, diverse, weird, idiosyncratic version of what you want out of a relationship is absolutely perfect for you. And you don't have to change that for your mom or the people on the dating app or the rest of your congregation. It gets to be you. There's no right way that you have to do it. So you get to do whatever makes you happy. I could have just made that the sermon, but it seems too simple. And yet, if we learned that, we would be overcoming thousands of years of cultural weight that bears down our relationships and morphs them into things that don't actually make anybody. You crumpling yourself into a ball doesn't actually make your mother-in-law happy, even though that's what we've been led to believe. So the third revolutionary myth antidote is that we can question everything we've been handed about what relationship is supposed to look like. You remember the definition of tradition, right? Okay, now don't get me wrong. Some traditions are cool, but one definition of tradition, in the mood I'm in, is allowing dead people to guilt trip you. You don't have to be bound by the guilt trips of people who are no longer even alive, especially in the realm of such dynamic, loving, open, transformative, or even comfortable places as your relationships. And even in case you're hearing my bias that like relationships are good, let's do everything to make them work. Even if your relationship has to end, there ain't no guilt trips in there too. Sometimes you really do just outgrow each other. Sometimes you go, wow, you really taught me about my attachment style. Now, can we please move on to just being friends? Can we please move on to not even being friends for the next 3 years? And then please call the mediator and see if we're ready to do some reconciliation. All of this is allowed because of inherent worth and dignity. Your happiness matters. So whether you're a human potentials enthusiast like myself and always yearning to find out what's possible in relationship, or whether you've had enough struggle and would just like intimacy to be a place of refuge, whether you want a committed partnership or whether you just like hanging out with your best friends these days, or some combo of both, we can wake up to the reality of our basic worth and dignity. And we can be empowered by new insights about how love actually works. Imagine if the next generation grows up free of the outdated myths and informed by more wholesome understandings. What kind of beautiful world might we create together? Let me give you a quick reading from Khalil Gibran. It's a classic wedding reading, and I really love it. Make not a bond of love. Love one another, but make not a bond of love. Let it rather be a moving sea between the shores of your souls. Fill each other's cup, but drink not from one cup. Give one another your bread, but eat not from the same loaf. Sing and dance together and be joyous, but let each one of you be alone, even as strings of a lute are alone, though they quiver with the same music. Give your hearts, but not into each other's keeping, for only the hand of life can contain your hearts. And stand together, yet not too near together, for the pillars of the temple stand apart, and the oak tree and cypress grow not in each other's shadow. But let there be spaces in your togetherness, and let the winds of the heavens dance between you. Love one another, but make not a bond of love. Thank you so much for being here this morning. I hope you have a very happy Valentine's Day Eve, and whatever you do, a superb owl sports ball game later, may a superb owl visit you. Whether you celebrate Valentine's Day or you are a conscientious objector to that, May the spirit of love always be with you.